Good afternoon, Cedarfield. How's everybody doing today? Happy Groundhog's Day. Today's the big day where we find out, apparently, Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow. So we are in for 6 more weeks of winter, which is fine by me. I like winter, but I know a lot of people are looking forward to some sunshine and warmer temperatures, so we'll see what happens. Punxsutawney Phil has been known to be wrong occasionally, most of the time, I think. But anyway, I hope everyone is doing well today. Today is also a special day because it is my birthday, so it's special to me. Happy birthday to me. So because it's my birthday, I am going to talk about my favorite food. So as a dietitian, I get asked a lot, obviously you might imagine, what do I like to eat, or what do my meals look like, or people are always judging my plates, seeing what I'm going to eat, and I think a lot of people would be shocked to know that my favorite food is ice cream. If this whole statement is true, that you are what you eat, then I would literally be a bowl of ice cream, probably with a banana on top, because I eat a lot of bananas as well. But I thought we would talk about ice cream today. There's lots of different things, different aspects of it that might be interesting to you. Obviously, it's interesting to me because I enjoy eating it, but as someone who studied food science, there's a lot of interesting things about ice cream that I thought we'd talk about that you might not know or have ever thought about. So, of course, I have to start off with a few little fun facts. So the earliest known frozen dessert ice cream is the earliest known frozen dessert. So it was made in what we now know as Turkey, going back as early as 2000 BC. And it was made from the winter snow, and then they would mix some fruit and molasses in it to give it some flavor and some sweetness and enjoy it as a dessert, which I think is interesting because we typically think of ice cream as a summer dessert, but yet some of its roots go back to the winter time because that's when they had access to ice, essentially. So that's something I've never really considered, but it's interesting. In 1921, a tradition kind of started where ice cream was served to immigrants arriving in Ellis Island. I'm not sure if they still do that. I'm sure there's probably some vendors and things around who are selling all kinds of treats and things. Maybe not on Ellis Island. I've never been to Ellis Island. I've been to New York, so I don't know what it's like if there are people selling things or whatever. I guess it's considered national park property or something, so probably not. Anyway, I'm digressing. All right, so I think this is a fun little fact. In 1904, at the St. Louis World's Fair, there was a vendor selling ice cream, and he ran out of cups to serve it in, so he was kind of in a bind. So he found a nearby vendor selling waffles, and he just kind of thought really quickly and started using the waffles. He would roll them up and put the ice cream in them and use the waffles as a cup, and that is how the cone was invented. So I think that's great, because I do love a good waffle cone. And also in America, ice cream makes up 1/3 of our milk supply, or we use 1/3 of our milk supply for ice cream, and I probably contribute to a good bit of that myself. I love ice cream. I eat it every night. I eat it every day. I tell people all the time, yes, I am a dietitian, but I'm also human. So I do enjoy ice cream and junk food and pizza and things like that too. Okay. All right, so moving on to the more scientific discussion of ice cream. So here I'm going to give you the scientific definition of what ice cream is. It is a colloidal food foam consisting of frozen ice crystals, air bubbles surrounded with fat globules, and coated with an emulsified protein layer, and an unfrozen liquid phase containing sugars and salts in solution. Sounds delicious, right? So I won't go into each of those parts and describe what those are, but to put that in layman's terms, non-scientific terms, that's just basically listing out the fancy names for the ingredients. But here's the simplified list of ingredients. For ice cream to be ice cream, it has to contain milk, cream, sugar, and air. So milk, cream, and sugar are probably obvious, but a lot of people don't realize that air is technically a ingredient of ice cream. And in fact, the FDA regulates the amount of all of these different ingredients in ice cream, and they also will measure the amount of air incorporated into the ice cream, and they have to meet a certain percentage of air for it to qualify as ice cream and for you to be able to put ice cream on your label. So think about like a meringue foam where you're whipping the egg whites and you're incorporating air, and you create all the little bubbles. Well, ice cream is the same way, just you're using the cream and the sugar to incorporate. That's why you churn and mix that the mixture to incorporate air, so that air creates what is called overrun. That's just a fancy name for how much air is incorporated into the ice cream, and that's what the food regulators will measure when they're determining whether your product qualifies as ice cream or not. So one other thing that they're going to look for is the amount of milk fat that is in the product. So this is probably the biggest indicator of what you can call your product or how you can label it. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. So for a food manufacturer to put ice cream on their label and call their product ice cream and sell it as ice cream, it has to have at least 10% of the ingredients being milk fat. The other stipulation is that the ice cream has to weigh, 1 gallon of ice cream has to weigh at least 4.5 pounds. So 4.5 pounds to the gallon, 10% milk fat to have ice cream. Anything less than that, it's not ice cream. You can label it as something else, but you cannot technically say ice cream. So that's why you might go to the ice cream section in a store and you might see something like a frozen dairy dessert, because they probably don't meet the qualifications to be technically ice cream. So they have to call it something else. Kind of like how Cool Whip is a whipped topping and it's not actually whipped cream. Same thing there. Okay, so then you might also have what's considered a premium ice cream. I personally love Kroger's premium line of ice cream. They've got some really unique flavors. So to label something as premium, it has to have at least 12% milk fat, so even more fat in there. And science has proven again and again that fat tastes good, and that's why the more fat in a product, especially something like ice cream, the better it's going to taste, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. So then you might also have some of the, you're adding fat, so ice cream's getting better and better. But then, of course, people like to enjoy ice cream, but they don't want all the fat, so now we have all of these healthier versions of ice cream or diet ice cream. So there are also rules to regulate whether you can consider something low fat or reduced fat or whatever, because a lot of people might want to market to, there's a large group of people who love ice cream but don't want all the calories or the fat, so they're going to be looking for these kind of reduced fat versions. So it might be tempting for a food manufacturer to label their product as reduced fat or low fat to attract those buyers. But again, they have to follow certain rules in order to be able to put that label on their product. So some of those rules are, so in order to call something reduced fat, they have to have at least 25% less fat than what would normally be ice cream, considered the level of fat in ice cream. So 25% less of that 10%. So that can be reduced fat. And then to go even further, to call something light, it has to be 50% less total fat. And then you can go even further with the fat reduction and call something low fat or non-fat. So low fat has to have less than 3 grams of fat per serving, and then non-fat has to have less than 0.5% total fat per serving. So don't be fooled by some of those different names. So now you know if you're going for like the lowest level of fat, you want non-fat or low fat. If you're looking for something in between, you want reduced fat or light. All right, so going back to food manufacturers and the factors that affect the quality of ice cream. I think, if you're like me, you've tried a whole gamut of ice cream. I am loving this new kind of boom in Richmond where we have all of these great ice cream shops now. When I first moved here, I was looking for an ice cream shop because, again, I like ice cream. And there was nothing. There was Sweet Frog, and that was kind of it. And there was Bev's in Carytown. And I was a little disappointed, and now all of a sudden there's just been an explosion of ice cream. So I'm all on board with it. So there are a lot of these are homemade or made right here in Richmond, right in the shops. So these are going to be some really high quality ice creams that I've really enjoyed. There's also a big trend to have vegan ice creams, gluten-free ice creams to accommodate all of the different people who enjoy ice cream, and I appreciate that, but I definitely like those, those real good ingredients with the fat and all that good stuff. But there's also, if you go to the grocery store, you've probably had some of the like really high-end premium ice cream, and then on down the line to like the big, gigantic plastic tub of ice cream that you might get at like a kid's birthday party. And so you have probably had enough experience, I would, assume that you can tell the difference between a really good quality premium ice cream. It's going to be smooth and rich and creamy versus the cheaper, less quality ice cream, which is, going to probably not have as much flavor, and it's going to be kind of gritty and probably tastes like it's a little freezer burned. And there's a reason for that. So there are three main factors that affect the quality and kind of assist in like rating the quality of an ice cream. And those are flavor, texture, and body. So flavor is an obvious one. Anybody who enjoys ice cream, you're going to notice the flavor. If you have just plain vanilla, can have a whole gamut of sweetness or kind of, how much vanilla flavoring they use in it can really determine if it's just kind of like frozen water or if it's just got that really rich vanilla flavor that's so delicious. So the cold temperatures that we have to serve ice cream at can tend to mute the flavors of ice cream. And, if you eat a big enough portion of ice cream, you probably will start to notice your tongue is kind of going numb, and it becomes really hard to taste the flavor of the ice cream. So to create a better quality of ice cream, manufacturers might make their flavors really bold. They'll use a lot of flavoring or, some really rich chocolate in there, different things like that, or like, particularly if you have like mint chocolate chip, they'll have some, a lot of mint flavoring. So those good premium ice creams are going to have really bold flavors, probably, lots of chunks of nuts or chocolate chips or cookie dough or, ground up cookies, all kinds of stuff. Now you've got, like the peanut butter, like Butterfingers and all these different things in there to really contribute to the, the experience of the ice cream in your mouth. Some people like just a nice, smooth ice cream, and they don't want all those chunky stuff in their ice cream. So, to each his own. But texture is another thing. That's kind of what we're talking about now, the texture of the ice cream. So there's the texture that's created by some of these things you might add into your ice cream. But the true texture we're talking about is of the ice cream itself. So obviously the smoother the better. I mean, most people don't really prefer that cheap tub of ice cream with the gritty flavor. People like that really good smooth flavor. So this is created by smaller ice crystals that can be well churned for a really long time. So those small ice crystals make for a smoother texture, whereas some of the, if the ice cream isn't churned very well and enough air isn't incorporated into the ice cream, then you're going to have these larger frozen crystals of the cream and the milk, which then creates that gritty flavor. So that's the same reason why if you leave ice cream in your freezer for too long, which I don't understand, but if you do leave ice cream in your freezer for too long, all of the opening and the closing of the door and taking it out and putting it back in, that ice cream's gonna melt for a little while and then it's gonna refreeze, and then it's gonna melt for a little while and it's gonna refreeze. And what's happening there is, those ice crystals are melting and then they're reforming, and then they're melting and reforming, but they're not also going through that churning process that they would in, the factory or wherever it's being created. So every time that ice cream is allowed to melt a little bit and then refreeze, those crystals are being reformed larger and larger, which, as we know now, affects that texture. So old ice cream is, it's going to get a little gritty as it sits in the freezer. All right, so you should just go ahead and eat it so it doesn't, have that. You don't want to ruin the quality of the ice cream, right? Okay. So then there's also the body of the ice cream, which is measured by firmness and richness, and the greatest contributors to that is the fat content. So going back to what we were talking about how fat makes things taste good, and it also, the higher the fat quantity or percentage, then that you're going to have that really smooth, what's called mouthfeel. So it's, the experience of the ice cream in your mouth, on your tongue, and as you're swallowing it. So that all is what's considered the body of the ice cream. And the fat contributes to that, but also the sugar and the air incorporated into it, the overrun, which increases the volume and contributes to that good quality body. All right, so we have, a whole, like I said, if you go to the grocery store, the ice cream section just is like half an aisle now, which I'm not opposed to. And there's all these different things. So we talked about, what is truly ice cream and premium ice cream, and then some of the reduced fat ice creams. But then you also have things like gelato and frozen yogurt and sorbet and sherbet and all these things. Now you have even the ice creams that have that aren't made with dairy, and they're like soy ice cream and things like that. So you have, just all kinds. And now they have the high protein ice cream for the keto diets and all this stuff. So there are all kinds of options out there. So we'll go through a couple of those to kind of determine how they're different from or similar to what we know as ice cream. All right, so the first one is gelato. Gelato contains less cream and more milk. So because it has less cream and more milk, so it is lower in fat. So you think, oh, yay, I'm going for a healthier option, I'll have gelato. But the problem is, because it has more milk, that doesn't allow for all that air to get incorporated into it, so it is denser than regular ice cream. So despite the fact that it has less fat in it from having less cream, it's probably still going to come out higher on the calorie end because it's denser and there's more in there. But gelato is kind of famous for having all of the really interesting flavors. There's a little shop downtown near where I live, and they have all kinds of interesting things like lavender gelato and lots of herbs and spices and pepper incorporated into their gelato. I even had some that had Cheetos all ground up in it, which sounds very strange, but it was actually pretty good. All right, so gelato is usually smoother and creamier just because it's churned more slowly, which contributes to that texture and that body. It's also served at slightly higher temperatures than a regular ice cream. All right, so then we have frozen yogurt. So yogurt, it's just what it sounds like. It's frozen yogurt. So yogurt is milk that has good bacteria in it, and so it is fermented a little bit and has that tangier flavor. And then if you freeze it, then you have frozen yogurt. So it is basically the same ingredients as ice cream. It's probably going to have less cream incorporated into it. So it tends to have a healthy reputation, but because you're not adding in all that cream like you are to regular ice cream, They tend to accommodate that with more sugar, especially to mask that tangy flavor that yogurt can have sometimes. So a lot of times, healthy frozen yogurt ends up being higher in calories than regular ice cream because they're kind of adding a lot of stuff in it to mask some of the stuff that they leave out. So keep that in mind when you're going over to Sweet Frog or places like that. All right. So then there's also sherbet. So sherbet is made from iced sweetened fruit juice or a puree of fruit, but then it's usually also incorporated with egg whites or gelatin to create a more creamy texture. And it does have the milk in it. It has it does have the milk and the cream in it, but it has typically less than 2% of total fat in it, milk fat. So it is low fat, but because it's got this fruit puree or fruit juice in it, that's obviously going to add a lot of calories. And then it's usually super sweetened because, again, they're trying to kind of mask the fact that it doesn't have all that fat in it. And you've kind of added other ingredients like egg whites and gelatin. So sometimes, again, like frozen yogurt or like gelato, we were saying it can come out higher in calories than ice cream. And then we have sorbet, which is similar to sherbet, but it's literally just the fruit juice or the fruit puree frozen. So it doesn't have the fat or the eggs or gelatin or any kind of dairy products in it. So it's going to have a really harder consistency. It's going to be a little more gritty. You're going to really notice those ice crystals. So it's kind of a different experience. So it's not really ice cream at all, but people kind of put the two and, they kind of lump them into the same category. Alrighty, so as a dietitian, what are my recommendations for ice cream? We'll talk about the nutrition side of ice cream, right? So I should say, as a human, my recommendations are eat ice cream. Ice cream is delicious. If you're a chocolate fan, there's lots of chocolate. If you're not a chocolate fan, there's all kinds of flavors. Vanilla and all the different sea salted caramel. There's just everything. So enjoy that ice cream. I would never deny someone their ice cream. And if you ever come up to healthcare, especially as our residents get older and start experiencing weight loss, we push ice cream on everybody. And so that kind of ties into the nutrition side of ice cream. So up in healthcare, that's a great source of calories and fat and protein that can really aid in helping someone to prevent weight loss, which is a big issue up in healthcare. So don't be surprised if one day you're in healthcare and you meet me and I'm telling you, eat all the ice cream you want. If you want it for breakfast, fine. Someone literally asked me the other day if they could eat all the ice cream they wanted, and I said yes. So he was very excited. And plus, it's something that's easy for people to eat. It's smooth. It's easy to go down if someone's having trouble swallowing, something like that. But keep in mind, so let's, the realistic side of the nutrition aspect of ice cream. So obviously, ice cream is going to be really high in fat and high in calories and sugar. So all of these things, if you're on a heart-healthy diet, maybe not the best choice. If you have diabetes, maybe not the best choice. But just in general, it's definitely a junk food just because it's got all the stuff in it. But on the plus side, there are some pros to eating ice cream. It's a great source of protein. It's a great source of calcium. And it's got vitamins and minerals in it. All the same reasons that you would eat or drink milk or eat yogurt or cheese, you're going to get those benefits from ice cream too. You're just going to get all the added stuff that goes with ice cream. And it, technically has some fluid in it, so you're getting a little water in there too. So anyway, so there are some benefits for sure. And then of course a happy tummy is the best benefit. So my suggestion, if you're someone like me who really enjoys ice cream, but also recognizes that, You can really overdo it with ice cream. It can really pack on the calories, especially if you're like me and you eat it at night. After you've had all your meals and your snacks for the day, more than likely, right before you go to bed, you have probably consumed all of your calories for the day. So when you tack on that ice cream at the end, then you're going overboard with your calories, and then that's where you start to kind of pack on the pounds, slowly but surely. So keep that in mind. If you are being conscious of your calorie intake each day and you're trying to keep it to a limit, if you know you want that ice cream at the end of the day, then keep that in mind throughout your day and maybe cut out, something else here or there. I wouldn't recommend cutting out like some of the more healthier choices like fruits and vegetables, but just, maybe smaller portions throughout the day so that you can save up some calories for that ice cream at night. I would also recommend not eating straight out of the carton, because before you know it, you've eaten half of it and you've consumed 1,000 calories, and it's a problem. So I would recommend portioning out what you eat, taking a portion out of the container, put it in a bowl, put the container away. I would also recommend using smaller bowls. So I have these 2 little bowls and they're tiny. They're like little ramekins. And I use those, and I know, okay, I can fill this up and that's probably an appropriate amount. And then you don't have a tendency to go overboard, because sometimes if you get a regular like cereal bowl, you may not realize how much you're putting in there. It may look like a little bit, but it might be a lot more than you realize. So a typical serving size, what's on the, not what you and I might consider a serving size, but if you look on the food label of a container of ice cream, the serving size is 2/3 of a cup. So that could be another way for you to portion control, is to actually get out a 2/3 cup scoop and scoop it out, put it in your bowl. That way you know exactly how many calories, fat grams, etc. you just had, grams of carbs, etc. And then if you like to go out to one of these fabulous ice cream shops that we have here in Richmond, if again you're trying to watch your portion size or be a little more healthy aware, then just ask for a kid's cup. Usually they have little small sizes. They're a little cheaper, and then they pack those in. The amount of ice cream they can fit in one of those cups blows my mind. But if you get the little kids cup, then they can only put so much in there, and that's a good way to practice some portion control. So despite the fact that it's cold outside, I hope that you all enjoy your ice cream any time of the year. I know I certainly do. I know they have some really great flavors in our dining hall here. I know the cappuccino crunch is everyone's favorite. If we ever got rid of that, I know there would be riots here at Cedar Fields. So I'm sure that Dave up there knows to keep it coming. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye-bye.